All right. Well, this week I have with me. Uh-oh, I'm getting. Okay. I'll just chop this part off. All right. Well, this week I have with me Andrew Drach. He is the head of Solway Consulting. And yeah, I wanted to just chat with him a little bit about his background. It's really interesting background. But thanks for coming on the show, Andrew.
Hey David, yeah, thanks for having me and thanks for organizing this. I'm very excited to chat and hopefully share experience for both of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know one of the things we talked about prior to this chat is that you have a background actually in academia, and which is kind of an unconventional transition from being in academia to kind of in the consulting and agency space. So I'd love to learn more about that transition and kind of what led you to the agency space.
Yeah, they say unconventional is to say very little. One of the biggest struggles I had through my career is everybody tells you that, if you want to move forward and you want to be successful, find a mentor. Well, finding somebody who's done what I did is going into academia, running a research lab, and then going back into entrepreneurship and running consulting agency. Still haven't found that. But I think that's also bringing very interesting perspective. Just uh, going into consulting world and having background in being in the environment where everybody's working together, everybody's trying to help each other and mentorship is honestly it's the name of the game, because everything you do and everything you learn should be open access, and you're promoted both outside of the institution as well as inside your own team. So that actually drove most of the ideas and most of the really what I call DNA of our company. When we started the company, the idea was that, okay, let's take the same standards and the same attitude as we have in academia, which was, we want to be in a collaborative environment. We want to share anything that we learned, and advice shouldn't have any strings attached. So
Hmm.
when we and it sort of became part of the process is that we engage with customers and we engage in the projects and we do the execution. So we do the tactical work, and we have a team of great developers, designers, AI engineers. And I always say that my time and my advice and strategy comes for free, not as a sales ploy, but that's just what I believe in. Is if we're providing advice and we're telling you what to do, for it to be objective, it just it feels right for me to say that this is what I think, and there is no price tag per hour for what I'm doing and for what I'm recommending. And the same goes honestly also for referring platforms or recommending products. Like we get approached a lot by a number of companies that trying to tell us, hey, become reseller or start promoting our products. And we always respond that we are not interested in collecting referral fees or trying to grow revenue based on that. If you can help us to get discounts for our customers, sure. But the only way we recommend the product is if we believe in this strongly without any
Mhm.
financial incentive.
Yeah. Well, I think that it builds so much more trust that way when you're
Yeah,
not
it's
recommending. Yeah.
it's it's a little difficult. It's a little difficult philosophy when you try to grow an professional services agency. And I always say that very transparently. Again, that's one of the things that I brought from academia is that being direct and transparent. Well, also that's I think part of my culture growing up in Ukraine. But it's always about direct communication, and it's all about telling what's best and what we think is the best way to go. And I always tell our customers is that my job as a consultant is to make sure that by the time we would finish our engagement, you should not need us anymore. So instead of the idea of let's try to figure out how to lock in and ensure long-term relationship based on some specific requirements or technical knowledge. It's the other way around. Let's empower the customer and give them everything they need, give their team everything they need to know, and from there they have a choice, and they're welcome to run it themselves. Or if they still want our help, we're happy to continue staying engaged.
Yeah, I like that approach. Basically, try to make yourself obsolete during
Yeah,
your time you're
yeah,
working
it's
with
by design. Yeah, but it goes against every single recommendation that I got when I was starting the agency.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's a much more human approach rather than strictly business, profit driven approach.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, it does impose scaling, not limitations, just some constraints. Like we've still been growing every year. So we started in 2016, and since then, every year was profitable. Every year was some organic growth in the range of 20, 30%. Even this year, I was looking at the books, and I think compared to last year, we've grown 25%. And with this philosophy, yeah, maybe I cannot 5x or 10x company over the next 36 months, but it's stable growth, it's growth with the partners. And honestly, this is what has allowed us to have very strong referral network, because our customers are really, they're our colleagues. So they trust us and they're happily referring us to other people in my network. And that's one of the things you and I talked about before the interview, is that's what made it really interesting, because we've grown a company with lots of organic growth, and we've never figured out sales or outreach because we never had to do it. So this is a brand new experience that we're learning now, of how to position ourselves and reach out to people who don't know who we are, who didn't come to us with a reference point of our either reputation or experience.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty common occurrence. I think what I tell people is that what takes a lot of agency founders from 0 to 1, their personal network and referrals, is not always what takes it from 1 to 2. Like, because in order to scale, you need some sort of economies of scale, like consistency across client types of work that you're doing, rather than everything being custom across a range of services and a range of verticals. So, yeah, but I mean that we've covered that before. Um, yeah, I'd love to kind of, I guess, speaking of growth, I know that you've had like a focus on larger clients. How has that affected your approach to growth?
Um, Honestly, everything had to be changed. So exactly as you said, we had very interesting time growing from 0 to 1 million revenue. Um, I forgot when I reached that, but it was a few years ago. And going from 1 to 2 was, I cannot say there was a significant shift, but it was a little bit different approach, where from growing up to 1, it was really purely organic, where we didn't try to control the growth, we didn't try to have any metrics. It was more of a, as long as the revenue continues increasing and the volume continues increasing, we're not trying to control it. From 1 to 2 was the first time where I started thinking about, okay, what do we need to do to make sure that it's either predictable or at least controlled? And what got us to the point of reaching 2 million per year revenue. I think the main thing and the main learning was that, yeah, it's not enough just to promote the quality of the work we do and hope that that's enough of word of mouth to be a system for sales or scaling. It was starting to figuring out, okay, how do we position, how do we make ourselves visible? And this was the period where we invested a lot in PR, in SEO, building content, building social media presence. So like all the little tiny symbols or tiny aspects of building trust and reputation. And it does seem to have indirect growth. Like it helps growth indirectly, but it's still not at a point where I can say, hey, it's a sales-driven organization, and this is where we are today. we're trying to get from 2, 3 up to like 10, and we're trying to set up that roadmap. It does require a completely different perspective. It does require completely different tools and different approach. And this is where we started working on building the audience, building the community. I started a newsletter. Main reason for starting that is I believe that for us to continue this idea of uh, making the core values and DNA of our company visible to everybody is by promoting content that's sharing that with the rest of the community.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I feel like I've told that to a number of different clients in the past, because it's like, it's one thing to have a lot of expertise that you've gained from working with clients that you brought to working with them, but then to actually like to go to market to attract other people like them, you have to essentially put yourself out there. You have to find out where your target audience is hanging out and spending time, and share some of that insight with them where they're spending time. It's like,
Yeah, that brings me wonderful memory. So there's nothing to make experiment or a new idea fail than for me to go and completely mess it up. So I started experiments with sales and outreach. I want to say it was like very end of 2019. Um, and yeah, it was like right before the pandemic. And at the time, we didn't have either the budget, or honestly, I didn't have the knowledge to go and build some sales process in-house. So when somebody reached out to us and say, "Hey, we do B2B outsource sales," I'm like, "Great, let's try this." And when we tried it, um, when we hired the team, I was like, "Okay, guys, here's the thing. I hate cold outreach." I was like, "And we're not doing this as a company." And they're like, "So what are we supposed to do?" Because I had this, perception that every cold outreach and every outreach in general is bad. The main reason being is that my phone gets like dozens of calls per day where somebody from Philippines or India or South America offers me software development services without even looking that we are a software agency. Um, and the same with my email. Like, I'm not exaggerating. There was a point where my email had 60,000 unread messages because I just decided there's no point even fighting and trying to figure out what's there, because everything was just, lots and lots of cold outreach. So yeah, when I did it first time, I was like, no, 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 I don't want to annoy people. So let's try to do sales, but without being pushy. And
yeah,
that led absolutely nowhere. Like, I think we got maybe a few meetings, but really not much beyond that. Um, and then over the years, my perspective significantly changed. And one of the key things actually I learned, I was talking to a friend of mine, and he's really successful marketing consultant in D2C space, so direct to consumer e-commerce.
yeah,
And he told me one day, and I told him like, hey, how you've done this? What do you do? Do you do cold? It was like, of course I do cold email. So of course I do cold email outreach or LinkedIn. And he was like, look, you have to understand the difference between the email that you'll see in your inbox and you'll get, oh my God, why is this here? Versus the email where you see it in your inbox and like, this is my luckiest day. This is exactly what I need today, is branding. That's the only difference. It'll be exactly the same copy, exactly the same offer, exactly the same everything. And if it comes from recognized brand versus unrecognized brand, it's just completely different perception and completely different response from the person. So he was the person who directed me to, go build out your online presence, social media presence, and if you do in person, go and build out your presence at the events so people know who you are. Um, because then when you reach out to them, it's really not cold outreach anymore. It's something that people can recognize either as a company or as your personal name, and they will consider this as a conversation that could be valuable.
yeah. It's kind of like you're kind of I don't know, you're getting visibility from your personal brand on social media or something like that, and then you're using cold outbound to go and kind of one to one try to ping them and see if hopefully they recognize you from the online content,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's like, oh,
And
you're
this,
that person.
yeah. And that's exactly what, you asked, like, what's different going after larger companies. Because we've done so much work with startups, we over the last 8 years we worked with over 100 companies. When we put out content, when people look for us, and they look at any of the online content or any of the testimonials, they associate us with the work that's been done, really, as you said, without a specific niche or vertical, just in a small business space. Um, and from there, really, we have very strong inbound, and that's sort of how we've grown, is because people recognize us there. But now, when we try to go out to larger companies and go on, it's impossible to go into all verticals, so we had to niche. Um, and when we did that, we realized that all the sort of person, all the presence and personality and reputation we have, it did not transfer into that space, because in that space nobody knew who we are. So it was almost starting from scratch, just knowing that we have a very specific target and we know what we're going to try to achieve. So being a lot more focused in our efforts. And it's still an ongoing process. We're still building out our sales funnel for the mid-market or enterprise, in a very specific niche. I decided that I think the best chances for us to establish our name with the larger teams or larger customers is to go back to my roots. My education is in engineering. Like, I did my bachelor in manufacturing, I did my PhD in computational sciences, mechanical engineering, and then, as I mentioned, I was running a research lab in biomedical for several years. So I decided to use that as first first attempt to niche into a vertical. So we're going and approaching industrial companies. And the very important thing that I'm doing, and again, it goes back to having background coming from academia. When we approach them, we're not approaching them with offers saying, "Hey, we do software of any kind," or we can do anything that you want. Just tell us what you need us to build. No, we approach them where I say, "Hey, I'm an engineer. We're in an engineer organization that understands industrial issues, and we know your pain points. Let's talk." And it
Yeah,
really works well. It resonates immediately, because we're not trying to tell them that we'll build anything for you. We're saying that we're solving engineering problems. And we always say that software is just one of the things, one of the tools in the tool belt. In the end, it's software, it's operations, and it's people, and it's data. When you put all of those pieces together, you get to a solution that either improves efficiencies or allows you to scale, because your operations remove the friction points.
yeah, absolutely. I think you made a really good point in there too. Just about some of those messaging that you're sending out. Relevance is really key. Like, when you're saying, "Oh, well, we can provide a range of things," versus we know your specific pain
So
points and are built around solving them. It's like that's much more relevant, and it's going to resonate a whole lot more as a
you,
result.
you just said a keyword. Somebody recently corrected me, and I really liked it. Is when they told me, if you want to have a successful outreach campaign, and if you want to make sure that either your PR or your sales campaign is successful, there's actually two components. It's relevance, which is easier for me because I'm a technical person and I like to just do throw technical details, but it's also resonance. It has to resonate that the issues we're discussing, the problems we're trying to solve, are the things that the organization cares about. And this was a difficult lesson for me, is that multiple people told me over the years, is that if you want to grow above specific size, you will have to stop being a horizontal company and you'll have to become vertically niche company. And I didn't understand that, and I was like, how does it make any sense for me to go and go after smaller market? but somehow magically will allow me to grow. And that's exactly why, the part that I didn't understand at the time is, if I'm trying to sell technical expertise, I always keep joking that every 10-year-old can write software, but now with ChatGPT, most probably every 5-year-old can write software. But if you're trying to build tools or automations or AI agents, whatever this is, or data streams or data lakes that are helping business to grow or helping with the business pain points, it has to resonate. And for it to resonate, it cannot be a message for everyone. It has to be something very specific for very specific vertical, very specific industry, honestly, very specific company and maturity size. And the messaging we do right now for startups or like VC funded companies versus what we do with the established and enterprise companies is completely different, because their problems and their life cycle is also completely different.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you had mentioned resonance, and it made me think about another thing that you had told me that has kind of resonated with your clients, which is you have a little bit of an unconventional uh, kind of backstory. Like you're kind of a family run agency. Your wife works with you as well, if I remember correctly. Um, can you talk a little bit about kind of how that dynamic has actually impacted uh, kind of working with clients?
Yes, so it was actually in the early year, like in the early first 2 years, it was either awkward or like, yeah, I couldn't figure out what is our position and how we're trying to brand ourselves, because when we were small and we didn't have enough portfolio, where I was terrified that we would be perceived as mom and pop shop, where you know my background is 50 scientific articles and doing software for the last 20 years. Monica has worked in international organizations driving both marketing and business development strategy. So now we both have incredible experience working in large organizations, but at the time I was afraid that because of our branding as a company, essentially wouldn't be taken seriously. But then I realized it's actually completely the other way around. We if we're trying to be in this very noisy field of software services where there's hundreds if not thousands of companies doing what we do, um, people are looking for connection points. Like, what resonates again is not just technical expertise, is how do we establish trust, how we talk about the company and the core values, and you know we can trust that organization is moving in the right direction. And the fact that we're a family owned business actually ended up being a really, really great anchor point for a lot of people, because somehow it resonates both with startups, with enterprise, and even with the public companies. When we talk to
Mm.
Fortune 500, all of them see this. Well, you you chose the partner in your life and you chose the partner in your business, and you guys have been doing it for years, and clearly this is working. Company has grown from being just two of us and a laptop to now we have over 30 employees across 4 countries. And it ended up being just that additional aspect of our business and how we run things. And it's a story that in the in the end, if you think about day-to-day life, we built this business. We now also have kids. When we started company, it was just two of us. Now we also have two toddlers running around. It's just part of part of the process.
Yeah.
And I think my my most favorite moment from pandemic was this video where somebody was doing an interview on live TV, and random like kid runs in, and this is when I realized we live in a different world. Like, it used to be completely separating the family life and the work life, and that was the moment where I think the whole world was like, well, it's pandemic, everybody works from home, so really those two are highly interlinked. um,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's it. It ended up being something that it was difficult initially to position, but now it's just naturally part of who we are.
Yeah. No, I remember that same video, and I think if anything, it kind of made them more relatable. It's like, oh, yep, I've been there before. Like it basically kind of, I guess, knocked over any sort of taboo that was
Yeah,
associated with that. It's like,
yeah,
no, your kids are gonna interrupt from time to time, and that's just life. And you know, we're real people. We're not just
yeah. And
business
some,
professionals.
sometimes I'm joking is that, I kind of trying to make the American dream as visible as possible. We're both first wave immigrants. We started family business and we're promoting this idea that, you can build it and you can create a successful organization. And, from day one, I've always been virtual organization. Mainly in the beginning, it was driven by the idea that we wanted to be lean and enable growth from day one. Even though at that time I didn't know what growth means, but over time I realized that being virtual and being distributed organization opens up incredible opportunities to hire the best talent because
Yeah,
you're not competing for a specific market. And honestly, Austin local market is difficult because every public company, every enterprise company is here in the city. So if we were to try to compete and get the best talent just within Austin area, we're competing with organizations that offer $1 million compensation per year. So it's going to be really tough.
yeah, absolutely. Well, you mentioned growth, and I'd love to kind of, wrap things up with just kind of, I guess, to understand maybe like the advice that you'd give to other agencies around building a predictable sales pipeline. Maybe like what you've seen works, what you think doesn't work, um, and
Yeah, that's a sensitive topic. I started freaking out about not knowing. So, like, and my background is engineering, and specifically, all my research was on building computational model and predicting the future. It's either predicting how the heart is going to behave or predicting how engineering system is going to behave. So, trying to model things and looking a few steps ahead. And sales was the first time where I'm like, I don't understand this. There's absolutely, and a lot of people told me you can successfully grow a company being an inbound led or like, referral led business. But I'm like, but there's no levers. Like there's nothing I can do to tell me what's going to happen tomorrow. Um, so from there, my thinking started evolving around two main things is clearly people run businesses that focus mostly on inbound or referrals and they're successful and they're stable, so clearly somehow this works, um, and that led to a few interesting realizations. I'll get to those in a second. And the second thing that happened to me is very naturally my first instinct was, okay, I need to go and do something that I have control over, which made me think that outreach and active prospecting is something that I should be building out. And in the beginning, I'll be honest, I tried everything that people recommended. I tried classes, I tried hiring firms, I tried hiring experts. And yeah, we would get traction in the sense of we would be visible and people would have conversations with us. But in the end, nothing would end up being a revenue stream. Like none of the efforts, none of the emotions that we did ended up giving us more than just visibility. In the end, all the revenue was still coming from the inbound or from the network, but not from the things that we tried on the outside. And then over the years of trying things and experimenting, what I realized is that what I was trying to do, or what people would recommend me to do, is, hey, try this, try this, try this, try this, try this thing. And I did try a lot of different individual components, but there's a very well established relationship between marketing and sales that I think I was just either ignoring or not fully understanding that for the sales to be successful, for any outreach to be successful, we have to be a recognized brand. We have to be an established brand. We have to have a reputation, because otherwise, just delete spam,
yep,
and
yep,
that's it. So we've tried many different motions and with absolutely zero success over the years. And then we put everything on pause and went back to just, doing what we used to do before, which is, we had profiles like on Upwork, on Clutch, LinkedIn, and just continue generating revenue, building solutions. But then while we took this pause and didn't do any sales activities, we did invest into socials, PR, and SEO, where, for example, our website, we added a blog where we've been publishing for the last 2+ years, like one article a week. And even doing just that without backlinks took us to completely be an obscure page that nobody has ever seen to having, I forgot what it is, but something like million impressions and whatever, 50,000 clicks per year, something like, I don't exactly remember the numbers, but much more traction than I ever expected, with the average ranking putting us somewhere around 30, 40. It's nothing crazy, but it immediately made us recognizable, and it allows us to be somebody who is available and exists in the virtual space. And then on top of it, we had several PR articles. We got several awards. I'm extremely happy with those behind me. Something that, I always wanted to say that, we're in a firm and we're a team that is recognized with external success metrics. And it's both with the interviews and with the awards for the work that we've done. And then adding all of those pieces and adding a little bit of a social media presence, building my personal network as well, and social media. With all of those things in place, when we went back and we started building the sales motion, again, it wasn't anymore, let's go and call everybody and ask them if they just need custom software. It was a lot more specific, where we went and tried to make sure that we only approach the prospects that we expect are in the need of our services. And when we approach larger teams, we don't go and try to tell them, here's what we do. We try to build relationships, and we try to do partnerships, and we go slower, purposefully slower, to get to higher quality results. So yeah, tried the spray pattern and that didn't go anywhere. But after that, going and being focused and trying to leverage all the trust symbols that we collected over the years. Because in the end, like, you have 5 seconds when reach out to somebody, either live or virtually, for them to make a decision if it's worth their time to pursue or not. So the focus was, okay, let's make sure we have all the things that we can have, all the trust symbols that we can collect and ready before we even start the conversation. And with that, it's very different outcomes. We're finally building pipeline. Honestly, like, after trying so many different things, it wasn't that we were trying the wrong ideas. Everything I was recommended to do before, it was the right ideas. It's just the sequencing of how it was done and the prerequisites that we were supposed to have, I didn't have in place.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a good lesson. It's essentially, you needed some of the social proof in place, so that when people did kind of pay attention to what you were saying, you had the credibility and the authority for them to be like, okay, now I'm going to dig a little bit deeper and connect with them and build a relationship.
Yeah. And I'll give a very specific example in the messaging. And again, it's also figuring out the messaging. We didn't have a brand voice, which I never realized how important that is. But very simple example, like when we tried it, let's say 5 years ago, when we tried it the first time, you were like, hey, we do custom software. Do you have any need? Great, this is very helpful. Versus now, when we approach somebody and we start a conversation, we're saying, look, it's an award-winning team. We've done 100+ projects. We have testimonials all over the internet. We work with anywhere from startups to federal agencies. And hey, look at this really cool app we built for NASA. So there's touch points where they get interested, they get curious, and there are things that they can, as I said, like, both be relevant and they can resonate with. And that gets their attention. That's get attention to even try out and figure out if there is a conversation to be had. Because the difficulty, what I found is, and I honestly have discovered it back in academia. Being an immigrant who went through the pathway of, coming from a different country, going to state university, and then trying to do research and trying to go further in academic career. One of the important aspects that I learned was it's really difficult to find an open door. Like if you go into a conference or apply for a paper or a grant or research or any of those things, um, that first step, what sales calls top of the funnel, is really tricky. So it's the same here. If you don't have those things, you're just part of the rest of the large crowd of noise that bombards everyone's attention every day. But if you can stand out in the crowd, I found that from there, usually this is where good work, this is where skills, this is where reputation kicks in, because people then start looking at what you have and what you've done. And from there, usually we've had successful experience closing the sales, closing the deals, build relationships. Partnerships is a very big part of this process because, to be recognized in a specific niche and not be an outsider, you need partners. There's no way you can do it on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you look forward, do you have what I guess what does the future of Solway Consulting look like in your imagination um, as you keep on building?
Honestly, it's very clear in my head. I don't know how much of that's gonna transfer into reality, but we're manifesting the hell out of it. The way I see it is that we've established the company in SMB space. So we've had success, and we're recognized for the work we've done with small companies, with the startups. We're slowly expanding and now establishing ourselves in the mid-market and enterprise space. So the way I see it, 3 years from now, it's the company that is uh, essentially not relying, as exactly as you said, above 2 million, you cannot rely on referrals. So it's not the company that's relying on referrals or word of mouth. It's the company that is in control of the demand and the control of the visibility and the presence in the individual sectors. And yeah, we'll continue promoting our work and working with startups. It's fun. It's great. It's really interesting. The ideas that you get exposed to and the founders that you meet are always incredible stories. And then continue, diving deeper and deeper into a niche. In this case, working with industrial enterprise companies and establishing our new name, new reputation there as this is what we're good at, this is where we're focused, and this is what we're continue building.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Andrew, this has been super insightful and fun, and yeah, I appreciate you coming on and sharing more about your journey. For those folks who are interested in getting to know you better, learn more about Solway Consulting, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Not email. Yeah, LinkedIn is the platform or the notifications that I usually respond to very quickly. So LinkedIn, Twitter, but yeah, not email. Beyond that, if we get intersected at the events, always happy to chat. And I always tell anybody that I meet is that my door and our team is always open. We always want to chat with new people. There's no strings attached. If you just have a question or idea to discuss, because that's part of what we believe in, is that sharing expertise, sharing the knowledge, and sharing what we learned along the way is something that we want to make available. Some ideas open source. Open source software contributes to the public, and we're trying to promote the same ideas both outside of just software, but also in just general business strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks again, Andrew. It was fun, and looking forward to staying in touch.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.